My friend jerked her head slightly and said, "Sorry, it's my Tourette's." That moment came right after she called my husband an offensive slur. About 6 months earlier, my friend Kelsey had told our entire group that she had been diagnosed with Tourette's syndrome. She explained that she had struggled for years with sudden outbursts and had finally received a medical diagnosis. She said she was now ready to speak openly about it. Our friend group immediately supported her. We read articles about Tourette's so we could better understand the condition. We reassured her that we would never judge her for something she could not control. We promised that if strangers ever confronted her in public, we would stand by her. We believed we were being good friends. At the time, we didn't realize we were supporting someone who might not have been honest with us. The first moment that made me uneasy happened about 3 weeks after her announcement. We were having brunch when Kelsey started telling a story about a coworker. In the middle of the story, she suddenly blurted out that the coworker was a fat cow. She immediately covered her mouth, apologized, and said it was her Tourette's. Everyone at the table nodded with sympathy. The coworker wasn't present, so the comment seemed harmless at the moment. Still, something about it stayed in my mind. Before her diagnosis, Kelsey had often complained about that same coworker. She had described her as lazy, annoying, and incompetent during private conversations. Now she was saying even harsher things, but attributing them to a medical condition. I tried to ignore the thought because I didn't want to be someone who doubted a disability. The second moment happened during my birthday dinner. At the end of the night, my husband Terrell came to pick me up. It was the first time he had met Kelsey. She shook her hand, her head twitched slightly, and she called him a racial slur. The entire table went silent. Terrell's expression hardened immediately. Kelsey apologized right away. She explained that she had Tourette's and said she felt embarrassed. She insisted she had no control over what came out of her mouth. Our friends quickly stepped in to explain the situation to Terrell. They assured him that Kelsey had a medical condition and that she didn't mean the words she said. Terrell looked at me. I could tell he didn't believe the explanation. On the drive home, he asked if I had ever heard Kelsey say anything like that before her diagnosis. I thought about it carefully and realized I hadn't. He said that seemed convenient. I told him I didn't want to accuse my friend of pretending to have a disability. Terrell replied that he wasn't accusing anyone, but he also wasn't willing to sit at a table with someone who used slurs toward him, regardless of the explanation. I understood his reaction. Over the next few months, Kelsey's outbursts became more frequent and more targeted. At Diana's promotion celebration, she called Diana stupid. During Becca's anniversary dinner, she said her boyfriend was ugly. At a potluck that Mira had spent all day preparing, Kelsey suddenly announced that Mira's cooking tasted like garbage. Every single time, the pattern was identical. Her head would twitch, she would apologize, she would blame Tourette's. And every time, the rest of us comforted her and reminded her it wasn't her fault. But I began noticing something else. Each insult matched an opinion Kelsey had previously shared in private. Months earlier, she had told me she believed Diana's promotion was based on appearance rather than ability. She had once commented that Becca's boyfriend was not attractive enough for her. She had also complained that Mira often overcooked her food. Now, those same opinions were appearing as Tourette's tics. I began researching Tourette's syndrome. One thing I learned was that coprolalia, the involuntary use of offensive language that people often associate with Tourette's, affects only 10% of people with the condition. I also learned that tics are usually repetitive and consistent. They are not typically complex, situation-specific sentences directed at different individuals. Tics usually occur randomly. They do not conveniently appear at moments when someone wants to say something hurtful. Another detail caught my attention. Kelsey's tics only happened in English. When we visited a Japanese restaurant where the server spoke very little English, Kelsey had no outbursts. When she met Terrell's grandmother, who spoke only Spanish, nothing happened. Her Tourette's seemed to activate only when everyone around her could clearly understand her words. Eventually, I decided to test my suspicion. I invited Kelsey to lunch, just the two of us.
During the meal, I told her I wanted her honest opinion about something. I said I had been considering a nose job because I disliked my nose. In reality, I had no issue with it, but I wanted to observe her reaction. Kelsey looked sympathetic. She told me I was beautiful and didn't need to change anything. No tick, no insult. I continued the experiment. I said I was thinking about quitting my job to become an artist even though I couldn't draw. Again, she was supportive and encouraging. Still, no Tourette's outburst. Throughout the entire lunch, I gave her multiple opportunities to criticize me. Nothing happened. Her condition appeared to disappear when there was no audience. Later that day, I told Terrell about the lunch. He said he had suspected the truth from the beginning, but didn't want to push the issue because she was my friend. I told him that she was no longer my friend. Anyone willing to use a fake disability to insult others and avoid responsibility was not someone I wanted in my life. The following week, our friend group gathered at Diana's apartment. I arrived about 40 minutes early because I was too anxious to stay home. Terrell drove us there and kept glancing at me, clearly wanting to say something supportive, but unsure what words to help. My hands kept shaking in my lap. Diana's apartment building looked exactly the same as always, with brick exterior and plant boxes beneath the windows. We walked up to the 3rd floor, and I knocked on the door before I could reconsider. Diana greeted me with a warm smile and a hug. Her apartment felt comfortable as usual, with soft lighting and pillows scattered around the room. Guests arrived gradually. Becca came first with a bottle of wine. Mira arrived with cookies she had baked. Portia followed with her energetic laugh that always filled the room. Kelsey entered last. She wore a bright red jacket and new boots and made sure everyone noticed. She hugged each person and offered compliments. She told Diana her haircut looked great. She praised Becca's earrings. She said something kind to Mira that made her smile. Watching her now, I saw the behavior differently. It looked like a performance. Terrell stood beside me holding his drink, and I felt his hand briefly brush mine, a quiet reminder that he understood what I was about to do. We all settled into the living room. Snacks were placed on the coffee table, and music played softly in the background. Conversation flowed easily at first. Kelsey eventually told a long story about her neighbor's cat somehow entering her apartment repeatedly. She added humorous details about finding the cat in her closet and on top of her refrigerator. Everyone laughed. Kelsey clearly enjoyed the attention. I didn't laugh. I watched. When the laughter faded and a natural pause appeared in the conversation, my heart started pounding. This was the moment. I took a deep breath and said I needed to discuss something important. The room fell silent. Everyone looked toward me. I calmly explained that I had been paying attention to Kelsey's tics for months. I described how every insult matched something she had privately said before. I mentioned her comments about Diana's promotion, Becca's boyfriend, and Mira's cooking. Then I pointed out the language pattern. Her tics only happened in English. They never appeared when she spoke with people who didn't understand the language. Finally, I described the lunch we had shared the previous week. I explained that I had given her several chances to insult me while we were alone, yet nothing happened. No tics, no outbursts. Kelsey's face turned pale. Then it flushed red. She stood quickly and accused me of being cruel. She said I was attacking someone with a disability. She appealed to the rest of the group and asked me how I could make such accusations after she had trusted us with something personal. But this time, people didn't immediately defend her. Diana spoke first. She admitted that she had been questioning things since the promotion party. Becca said her boyfriend's comment had felt strangely specific. Mira explained that when she researched Tourette's, she learned that tics are usually repetitive movements or sounds, not carefully constructed insults directed to different individuals. Brandon added that his cousin had Tourette's, and his symptoms looked nothing like Kelsey's. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Kelsey began crying and insisted her case was different. Terrell finally spoke. Calmly but firmly, he said he would not sit quietly while someone used a fake disability to direct slurs at him. Then Portia asked why Kelsey never had tics in other languages. Kelsey struggled to answer. Her explanation didn't convince anyone. Finally, Diana stood up and told her to leave the apartment. Kelsey protested, cried, and accused us of attacking her, but no one defended her. Eventually, she grabbed her purse, knocked over a glass of wine, and stormed out. After she left, the room remained silent. Over the next few hours, we talked through everything and recognized the pattern clearly. Every insult had been carefully targeted using private information she had learned as a trusted friend. In the following days, messages circulated among the group. Many people admitted they had doubts, but were afraid to question someone claiming a disability. Then something unexpected happened. A woman named Amanda called me. She knew Kelsey from another friend group. She told me that 2 years ago, Kelsey had claimed to have lupus. Hearing that confirmed something unsettling. This behavior was not a single incident. It appeared to be a pattern. That night, Terrell and I—
But he had stayed quiet because she was my friend, and he didn't want to create conflict. Now he told me he was proud that I had trusted my instincts. He said I had been willing to risk tension within the friend group in order to stand up for what was right. That required courage, especially when everyone else was still defending Kelsey. I leaned my head against his shoulder and told him I felt relieved more than anything. The constant doubt and second-guessing had been exhausting. I had spent months wondering if I was being a bad friend just for noticing patterns. I kept feeling guilty for having suspicions. Now I understood that trusting what I observed had been the right decision. We sat quietly for a while. The television played softly in the background. Terrell's arm rested warmly around my shoulders. Outside the window, the city lights blinked in the dark. Everything felt different, but also somehow clearer and more stable. The following weekend, Diana sent a group message inviting everyone to her place again. She mentioned that it would be nice to spend time together without any drama. Nobody needed clarification about what she meant. I arrived with Terrell and a bottle of wine. Becca showed up with her boyfriend. Mira brought homemade cookies. Portia came directly from work, still wearing her business clothes. We gathered in Diana's living room. Someone turned on music, and conversation began naturally. The atmosphere felt different immediately. No one seemed tense or prepared for something unpleasant to happen. No one was monitoring their words or preparing to smooth over an uncomfortable moment. We simply talked and laughed like friends enjoying a normal evening. I realized I was relaxing in a way I hadn't for months. My shoulders dropped and the tension in my jaw faded. I hadn't noticed how much stress I had been carrying until it disappeared. We talked about ordinary topics, weekend plans, new restaurants, and a movie someone had recently watched. Simple discussions that didn't require managing anyone's reactions or navigating around insults disguised as medical symptoms. Around 9 o'clock, Becca's boyfriend quietly mentioned how relieved he felt not having to deal with Kelsey anymore. He spoke carefully, as if unsure whether it was acceptable to bring up her name. Becca squeezed his hand and reassured him that it was fine to talk about it. She explained that for months after the anniversary dinner incident, she had been making excuses for Kelsey's behavior to him. Every time he expressed frustration about being insulted, she defended Kelsey and reminded him about Tourette's, asking him to be patient. He said he had gone along with it because he trusted Becca, but he had never actually believed Kelsey had a real medical condition. The situation had created tension between them because he felt that Becca was choosing her friend over him. Now that Kelsey was no longer part of the group, their relationship felt stronger. Communication between them had improved, and he felt that Becca truly supported him instead of defending someone who disrespected him. Becca admitted she felt terrible about putting him in that position. She said she had been so focused on being a supportive friend that she ignored her boyfriend's legitimate feelings. Everyone in the room nodded in agreement. In different ways, we had all done something similar. 3 days later, I ran into Kelsey at the grocery store. I was standing in the produce section selecting avocados when I heard her voice behind me calling my name. I turned around and saw her standing there with a shopping basket, looking completely normal as if nothing had happened. She smiled and asked how I had been and what I had been doing lately. Her tone sounded cheerful and friendly, as though we were still close friends who simply hadn't seen each other for a while. I stared at her for a moment, surprised by the audacity. I kept my voice neutral and told her I had been fine. She continued chatting about her week, a television show she had been watching, and whether I wanted to meet for coffee sometime. I picked up my avocados and said I needed to finish my shopping. Her smile faded. She stepped closer and the friendly expression disappeared from her face. In a low voice, she said I had ruined her life.
She accused me of turning everyone against her, destroying her friendships, and making her look like a liar. Her tone was angry and completely different from the cheerful voice she had used only moments earlier. I replied that she had done that to herself by pretending to have a disability in order to insult people. She insisted I had no proof and accused me of being jealous of the attention she received. I pushed my cart past her and walked away. She called out that I would regret it, but I kept moving. My hands were shaking slightly as I placed the groceries into my car. That evening, I checked social media and saw that Kelsey had posted several vague messages about betrayal and fake friends. She wrote about people abandoning you when you need them most and learning who your true friends are. She shared quotes about loyalty and backstabbing, along with articles discussing discrimination against people with disabilities. Each post clearly referred to our situation, but they were written in a way that portrayed her as the victim. Within a few hours, I began receiving messages from mutual acquaintances who had not been present at Diana's apartment. They had seen Kelsey's posts and wanted to know what had actually happened. They wanted to hear my side of the story. I responded to each message with the same straightforward explanation. I described the patterns we had observed with her supposed tics. I explained how the insults always matched opinions she had privately expressed before. I also mentioned that her Tourette's symptoms appeared only in English and never when she was alone with someone. I didn't exaggerate anything or add unnecessary drama. I simply explained what we had seen and allowed people to draw their own conclusions. Most of the responses were similar. Many people replied with comments like, "Now that you mention it," or "I always wondered about that." A few days later, I received a message from someone named Leah. She introduced herself as one of Diana's co-workers who I had briefly met at a few parties. She said Diana had told me about the situation with Kelsey and asked if I would be open to meeting for coffee. Something about her message seemed sincere, so I agreed to meet her at a cafe near my apartment. Leah arrived exactly on time with a warm smile and ordered 2 lattes. She quickly explained why she wanted to talk. She told me she had experienced something similar during college. A person in her friend group had pretended to have lupus in order to gain attention. The entire group had supported that person through what they believed was a serious illness. They had given rides to medical appointments, brought meals, and excused a lot of problematic behavior because their friend was supposedly sick. Nearly 2 years later, they discovered that the person had never actually been diagnosed with lupus and fabricated the entire story. Leah said the betrayal had been deeply upsetting. For a long time, she questioned her own judgment and wondered how she had been fooled so completely. Hearing about Kelsey reminded her of that experience, but also made her feel less alone. We talked for over an hour about manipulation, guilt, and how people sometimes exploit others' desire to be supportive. Leah showed me several articles about factitious disorders, including a condition called Munchausen syndrome. She explained that some individuals fabricate illnesses or disabilities because of psychological needs for attention and sympathy. The descriptions matched Kelsey's behavior closely. People claiming multiple conditions over time, symptoms that never quite match the real medical condition, and individuals who thrive on the attention their supposed illness creates. Reading those articles changed my perspective slightly. I was angry at Kelsey for lying and hurting people. Understanding that she might have serious psychological problems made me feel something closer to pity, though the frustration remained. It didn't excuse her behavior, but it helped explain why someone might act in such a destructive way. Leah and I finished our coffee and exchanged phone numbers. She mentioned that Diana had said the group might be meeting again soon and asked if she could join sometime. I told her I would ask the others, but I was confident they would be happy to include her. 3 months later, our group friends had settled into a new normal. Leah had become a regular member of the group, and her direct personality and genuine kindness fit perfectly with everyone. Gatherings felt more relaxed and authentic than they had for over a year. No one had to walk on eggshells or brace for sudden insults disguised as a tic. The absence of Kelsey's behavior allowed our friendships to grow stronger and more genuine. Diana eventually told me that speaking up about the situation had encouraged her to set better boundaries in other parts of her life as well. She had started therapy and learned more about manipulation tactics and emotional pressure. She explained that Kelsey had used social expectations about disability to avoid accountability for harmful actions. Learning to recognize those patterns helped Diana become more confident, both in her personal life and at work. Our group also discussed how we had unintentionally enabled the situation. We had all noticed small inconsistencies, but hesitated to question them because we didn't want to appear insensitive towards someone claiming a disability. In hindsight, The pattern was obvious. Each tick perfectly matched a private opinion Kelsey had already expressed. Each outburst happened at a moment designed to cause maximum embarrassment. We agreed that it was important to believe and support people who disclose real health conditions. At the same time, we recognized that it was reasonable to notice when a story didn't add up. Trust and awareness both mattered. Eventually, life moved forward. The group continued meeting regularly, enjoying dinners, game nights, and simple conversations without tension. For the first time in months, our friendships felt easy again. And that sense of normalcy, something we had once taken for granted, felt surprisingly valuable.
She continued walking forward. Eventually, she found a quiet corner, took several deep breaths, and reminded herself that reacting to Kelsey's behavior would only give Kelsey exactly what she wanted. Later that evening, Portia called me, and we spoke for more than an hour. She explained that walking away without responding felt like a significant victory. Although it had been challenging in the moment, she recognized the manipulation for what it was and chose not to engage in Kelsey's drama. When we met again the following weekend, Portia shared the full story with the group. We acknowledged how much progress she had made in recognizing toxic behavior and setting clear boundaries. Diana said it represented growth for all of us. We were learning how to recognize manipulation and avoid the instinct to defend ourselves to people who had already decided their narrative. The experience with Kelsey ultimately taught us to trust our instincts and avoid engaging with individuals who attempt to damage our reputation. Brandon attended that gathering as well, and at one point he asked to speak with me privately. What he said surprised me. He thanked me for speaking up about Kelsey and helping remove her from the friend group. He admitted that for months he had dreaded every social event involving us because he knew Kelsey would be present. Whenever Becca invited him to meet her friends, he felt anxious because he never knew what cruel comment Kelsey might make about him or their relationship. The remark she made about his appearance at their anniversary dinner had hurt him deeply, even though he tried to laugh it off at the time. Brandon explained that Becca's friendships were important to her, and he genuinely wanted to be part of that circle. However, Kelsey had made the experience uncomfortable and unpleasant. Now he actually looked forward to spending time with everyone. He felt welcomed and respected instead of targeted. Becca overheard part of our conversation and walked over to hug both of us. She said their relationship had become stronger now that she no longer had to defend someone who consistently disrespected her partner. That conversation stayed with me for several days. It made me reflect on what it truly means to be a good friend. Support is important, but sometimes being a good friend also requires difficult conversations and clear boundaries. It means standing up when someone is being treated unfairly, even when the person responsible has an explanation for their behavior. For a long time, I worried about being perceived as someone who doubted disabilities. That concern almost allowed Kelsey to continue hurting people I cared about. One evening, while Terrell and I were preparing dinner together, we talked about everything that had happened. He told me that seeing me find my voice and stand up for what was right made him admire me even more. He had watched me struggle with the decision for weeks, weighing my values against what I observed. He said he was proud of how I handled the situation. I told him I could not have done it without his support and the thoughtful skepticism he showed early on, which helped me trust my instincts. About 2 weeks later, our group started planning a weekend trip together. We had talked about organizing a group vacation for years, but never managed to coordinate everyone's schedules. Diana suggested renting a cabin in the mountains for a long weekend. Surprisingly, the planning process went smoothly. Everyone responded quickly to messages and contributed ideas without tension or disagreements. Mira located an excellent rental with enough bedrooms for everyone. Becca created a shared document for meal planning where people added their favorite dishes. Leah volunteered to organize activities and researched hiking trails and local attractions. Halfway through the planning process, I realized that something like this probably wouldn't have worked when Kelsey was part of the group. There had always been underlying tension that complicated even simple decisions. Someone would suggest an idea, and Kelsey would immediately find faults with it. She often complained about the cost, location, or timing in ways that disrupted the entire conversation.
Now things moved forward easily because everyone genuinely wanted the trip to succeed. No one was creating problems simply for the sake of creating obstacles. The trip took place in early fall when the leaves were changing color. We drove up on Friday afternoon, spent the evening settling into the cabin, and prepared dinner together. On Saturday, we went hiking during the day. That night, we built a bonfire in the backyard. The fire crackled softly while sparks rose into the dark sky. We sat in a circle with blankets and drinks, talking about everything that had happened over the past year. Diana began reflecting on what she had learned from the entire situation. She said it taught her to trust her instincts, even when they conflicted with what she believed she should think. She had sensed something was wrong with Kelsey's behavior, but ignored those feelings because she was afraid of questioning someone's disability. Now she was addressing that pattern in therapy and learning to listen to her intuition instead of dismissing it when it made her uncomfortable. Becca agreed and added that supporting someone does not mean tolerating harmful behavior. A person can have real struggles while still being accountable for how they treat others. Mira said the experience showed her how important honest communication is in friendships. For a long time, we had talked around the issue instead of addressing it directly, which only allowed the situation to worsen. Leah had been quiet for most of the conversation, listening carefully. When there was a pause, she shared that being welcomed into our group meant a lot to her. She appreciated that our friendships were genuine rather than performative for appearances or social media. She explained that in previous friend groups, people were polite to each other in public but frequently spoke negatively behind each other's backs. Our group felt different because we had faced a difficult situation together and emerged stronger. Her perspective as someone who joined after the conflict helped us realize how much we had changed. We were no longer the people who silently accepted Kelsey's excuses for hurtful behavior. We had learned to recognize manipulation, set boundaries, and address difficult issues directly when necessary. About 3 weeks after the trip, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Kelsey had moved to another city. The person was unsure whether it was for a new job or simply a fresh start, but she was no longer living in our area. Part of me hoped she was receiving professional help and making better choices. Another part hoped she was learning to take responsibility for her actions, instead of relying on excuses. Mostly, though, I felt relief that she was no longer part of our social environment. I shared the news with the group, and everyone reacted similarly. We wished her well from a distance, but appreciated the separation. Later, Diana decided to host a small gathering to mark the 1-year anniversary of the day I first confronted Kelsey at her apartment. She jokingly called it an honesty and growth celebration. We arrived with food and drinks and spent the evening laughing, talking, and reflecting on how far we had come. Diana raised a toast to real friendship built on trust and honesty rather than walking on eggshells. As we clinked our glasses, I looked around at people who had chosen honesty over convenience. The atmosphere that evening felt relaxed and genuine in a way our gatherings had not felt in over a year. 2 weeks later, Mira brought someone new to a group gathering and introduced him as her boyfriend. He seemed slightly nervous meeting everyone at once, but the group welcomed him warmly and included him in every conversation. Later that night, Mira told me privately that she wouldn't have felt comfortable bringing him around when Kelsey was still part of the group. She never knew when a cruel remark might appear, and she didn't want someone she cared about to experience that. Now she felt confident bringing him into the group because she knew he would be treated with respect and kindness. Watching her introduce him with pride made me realize how much Kelsey's presence had affected all of us, often in ways we didn't recognize until she was gone. Becca's boyfriend, Brandon, later suggested celebrating our relationship anniversary together at Diana's place. He thought it would be meaningful to celebrate with the friends who had supported us through everything. Terrell agreed immediately, and I appreciated the idea of marking the milestone surrounded by people who genuinely cared about us. Diana offered to host and said she would handle the food if everyone else brought drinks. On the night of the celebration, we arrived with a bottle of wine and found Diana's living room decorated with streamers and a banner that read, "Congratulations." Mira had baked a cake with our names on it, and Portia brought flowers for the table. Leah arrived with her girlfriend, and both seemed excited to celebrate with us.
We gathered around the dining table eating pasta and garlic bread while everyone shared stories about Terrell and me. Brandon talked about the first time he met Terrell and how protective Terrell had been while asking about his intentions with Becca. Diana said she realized our relationship was strong during the whole Kelsey situation because of the way Terrell supported me. Portia said she admired how we handled conflict together instead of allowing it to divide us. Leah raised her glass and said she hoped to find a relationship as strong as ours one day. Terrell squeezed my hand under the table, and I felt deeply grateful for the moment and the people surrounding us. After dinner, Brandon joked that surviving the Kelsey situation together was probably more effective than any couples therapy we could have attended. Everyone laughed, and Terrell agreed that the experience had strengthened our communication and trust. I added that overcoming challenges as a team deepened our relationship in ways easy moments never could. We raised our glasses again, and I looked around the table at friends who chose honesty over convenience. The connection in that room felt real and lasting.